Hi, everyone. Welcome to our third session of Hopkins at Home. We're really happy that you're able to join us again tonight with what I think is going to be a really wonderful way to finish our series. I'm Karen Alexander with the International Arts and Mind Lab at Johns Hopkins University's Brain Science Institute, and I would love to welcome our guests for tonight. I'm going to just tell you their names and then they'll get to introduce themselves. Then I'll do a very brief recap of what we covered last week and an overview of what we'll be doing tonight. So first, let me introduce Dr. David Falcone. And David, if you could say hello, that would be great.
Good evening, greetings everyone. Pleasure to be here.
Excellent. And then we have Mr. Wyatt Aroke, who's a teacher at City Springs Elementary Middle School. And hello, Wyatt. Thank you for being here.
Hello.
And would you be able to, would your scholars like to introduce themselves, or you can introduce them to us, whatever's best?
I mean, I'll do a quick intro to hype them up because they deserve it. We have three of the most brilliant scholars you'll meet in Baltimore City with us this evening. Two 8th grade scholars who are both members of our honors program, and a 7th grade scholar, also a member of our honors program. So we have, I'll start with our 7th grader, Isaiah Benefield, a brilliant 7th grade scholar who has maintained a 3.9 GPA during virtual learning and has been admitted into our honors program this year and next year. So Isaiah, if you could come off a mute and say hello and give a little wave.
Hi.
Love it. And then we have a brother-sister duo joining us as well. So we have the brilliant Jarrell Hutchinson, who's been a member of our honors program for 2 years now, a member of our basketball team, and will be attending the historic Paul Laurence Dunbar High School next year. So Jarrell, if you could come off of mute and say hello.
Hello.
Love it. And not to be outdone by his sister, Jalissa, who's also been a member of our honors program for the past 2 years. She has maintained a GPA of 3.9. Oh, sorry, Jarrell's was a 3.8. So amazing. A 3.9 GPA, and will be attending Polytechnic Institute next year, where she just had an orientation today. So Jalissa, can you come off of mute and say hello and give a wave?
Hello.
Love it, love it, love it. Thank you so much for letting me introduce the amazing people that are.
Oh, and we so appreciate you all being here. Thank you all. We're really looking forward to hearing from you tonight. So for those of us who, for those of you who weren't able to join us last week, on last week's session, we were joined by Dr. Shante Stocks, who is the Assistant Director of Fellowships Engagement in the Johns Hopkins University Center for Africana Studies. And Dr. Stocks discussed the power of reading and writing and how that has sustained her throughout her life and her career. And then she also shared some of her poetry that she's written, both based on the themes from We Speak for Ourselves and also just from other parts of her own life. We also discussed chapters 2, 13, and 14 from Dee Watkins' book, We Speak for Ourselves, which, as we'll be hearing from our scholars tonight, has been the 2020 One Book selection for Baltimore City. And Dr. Tasha Golden, who is our colleague here in the International Arts and Mind Lab, as well as a musician and poet, guided us through a brief creative writing exercise. So it was an action-packed Wednesday last week. Tonight, we're going to be starting with David Falcone, who is going to be sharing with us his perspective and experiences on the power of storytelling, followed by a discussion with Mr. O and the scholars about their experiences with the One Book program and basically anything else they'd like to share with us. We're all ears. So David, with that, I'll turn it over to you, and please let me know if you need anything.
Right on, thank you. So once again, it's a pleasure to be here this evening, just to have an opportunity to tell my story. So it's always important for me to introduce myself what I feel is the proper way. And that's not to start with my title, that's not to start with my accomplishments, my appointments. It's to start with this. So if you really want to know who David Falcone is, you're looking at him. I am Dorley's husband. I am Cruz Matisse's father. I am Baba Taiwo and Dr. Mama Deborah's son. I am Mary's brother. I am a storyteller. I'm a drummer. And yes, I am an academic and a researcher. These pictures represent just a few aspects of who I am as a human being occupying this time on Earth. And because I recognize the importance of story and the power of storytelling, I use my platform whenever I can to let people know who I am truly. And pictures do speak a lot of words, so I couldn't think of a better way than to show these pictures about who I am. There was once an elder woman, and every day this elder woman would walk through the forest. She would take in the sights, the sounds, the taste, the touch, the smell. Everything the forest had to offer her, she would take. And she did it every day like clockwork. It was her sanctuary, it was her refuge, it was where she felt closest to the divine. On this particular journey, she came across a stone. And as an elder woman, you can imagine she's seen a lot of stones in her lifetime. So when she saw this one, she knew there was something special about it. So what did she do? She picked up that stone, she put it in her pouch, and she kept walking. As she was continuing on her daily pilgrimage, she came across a young man. And as the young man got closer to the elder woman, she could see with her own eyes that this young man had been in some trouble. He looked tired, he looked thirsty, he looked hungry, he looked like he had been in a fight or two. Anything that life was dealing this young man, he was coming up on the losing side every single time. When the young man finally approached the elder woman, he begged her, "Ma'am, do you have anything that I can eat? Do you have anything that I can drink? Can you help me in any way?" And it wasn't long until that young man saw that stone in the elder woman's pouch. And when he did, he no longer thought about his hunger, his thirst, his tiredness, his pain. There was only one thing on his mind, one thing that he wanted. And so he asked the elder woman, "Ma'am, may I have that stone in your pouch?" And without any hesitation, without taking a single thought or saying a single word, she took that stone out of her pouch. She gave it to the young man, and she kept walking. So the young man is going in one direction, and the elder woman is going in the opposite direction. The young man is not taking his eyes off of that stone for 1 second. He's thinking to himself, "This stone will make sure I'm never hungry again. This stone will make sure I'm never thirsty again. I'm never tired again. That no one will ever put their hands on me. Anything that I've ever wanted in my life, this stone will get it for me." But after a while, he stopped right in his tracks. It was for the first time that he took in the ambiance of the forest. And after a while, he turned around and he caught up with the elder woman. And when he did, this is what he said to her: "Ma'am, I want to give you this stone back because I want whatever it is inside of you that allowed you to give me this stone so freely." I tell this story because it captures the essence of not just me as a professional, but me as a human being, and the way that I have been fortunate to use storytelling in my life and in my career. It started with this woman, Mary Carter Smith. She was a world-renowned griot, born in Birmingham, Alabama, eventually made her way to Baltimore, Maryland. She was friends with Langston Hughes, actually took her class to speak with Langston Hughes. And she was the woman who introduced me to the art and science of storytelling. And she did it at 9 years old with me. And it was because of my jealousy and envy of another kid that I even decided to tell a story in the first place. And she happened to be there. And she was so impressed that she mentioned me on the radio show that she had at Morgan State University. She eventually invited me onto the show to read stories and eventually tell stories. My first performance as a storyteller was with her at 10 years old at the top of the World Trade Center in downtown Baltimore. So you can imagine as a 10-year-old never being that high up other than an airplane, so that high up in a building before, telling your first professional storytelling performance with a world-renowned griot. But that was my training. I tell people that was the PhD that I had before I got to Hopkins, was the PhD in storytelling, and I learned from the best to become a storyteller. And I can never thank her enough for how she changed my life, and honestly how she has helped me to bring something new to public health. And because of storytelling, it is the way that I break down the walls of the ivory tower. So my journey with storytelling to the intersection of arts and health began my first year at Hopkins in the School of Public Health in the Mental Health Department. I was taking a class called Gaps and Opportunities in Public Mental Health. It was a practicum course. And for my practicum, I was given the special assignment to go to a recovery center in West Baltimore and teach the client storytelling. I was initially hesitant only because I was so focused on being a researcher, an epidemiologist, which was the training program that I was in at Hopkins. But my instructor insisted, and I went ahead and did this practicum, and it changed everything for me because it showed me that this ancient art form, this universal art form, this art form that I learned through the African oral tradition was applicable in public health. And that is what Discover Me, Recover Me is. It's an organization with me and my mother where we utilize storytelling from the African oral tradition to encourage people in their healing from any manifestation of trauma. What I was able to do as a researcher is what I brought to the One Book Baltimore project, which is a variation of a methodology I call story mapping. And just as it sounds, it is mapping the stories. In this case, with the picture that you see here, assets and resources that were identified by community members in Southwest Baltimore, 3 Southwest Baltimore neighborhoods. What I did with the One Book Baltimore project was to take the part of the methodology that I developed with story mapping, which was the telling of a story to help solicit other stories. So I distinctly remember this story given the book that I was connected with while working with One Book Baltimore, A Long Way Down. And I told the story Searching for Death. And I chose that story because it makes you think and reflect on how dangerous revenge can be, even when it's understood, even when you can say it's perhaps justified, how deleterious and corrosive a situation and circumstances can be when revenge is kind of that guiding principle. And so I asked the students what they thought about that story and just how they reflected on the story, how they related to the story and the characters. Just a quick synopsis, it was 3 brothers who were searching for the personification of death because tragedy had struck their entire village and everyone, family, friends, colleagues, elders were all gone. And they were so filled with rage and anger and guilt that they went to search for death, to kill death, believe it or not. So I got great insight from the students about how they personally related to that story, and then making the transition to Long Way Down, the connections that they saw through the story that I told from a particular tradition in Long Way Down, which was the book that they read at that time. So I thoroughly enjoyed the opportunity that I got to listen to the kids and capture their insight and really activate their wisdom, which we all know is there. And a lot of times with kids, they just need the encouragement and the permission, believe it or not, to tell their story. And I feel with story mapping and just storytelling overall, there is a power that we all harness in our narrative. And when we are encouraged and empowered to tell that story, we take wield of a power that can help build and heal and create and evolve the society and the communities and the families and the people that we want, which is what public health is all about, the health and well-being of the people. So with that, thank you for your time and your energy, and I will let Karen take it from here. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing all of that with us. And I love the idea of starting a presentation or a story with photos that represent different aspects of your life. I think I'm going to work on incorporating that into my own work in the future. So thank you very much for that. We're going to transition now and hear from the scholars and Mr. O from City Springs, but I just wanted to pause and say, does anyone have any clarifying questions for David? We will have a discussion following all of the conversations, but if anyone had anything they want to just ask quickly, we could do that now. And I'm not seeing any hands, so let's move on and hear from Mr. O and the scholars from City Springs. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us. So I'm really excited to have this conversation with 3 of our most amazing scholars around. I do want to both be cognizant of the topic at hand and the reality of the world. So you'll see some of the questions are going to explore more what is the reality our young people are living in, while also touching on what was the experience of reading this book and telling their story about. So I do want to make sure that's clear from the beginning. So to kind of understand what's going on, we have 3 scholars who have been learning behind computer screens for an entire academic year. Our school is not open to in-person learning for our middle schoolers yet. So I just wanted them to have a chance to share what that experience has been like. So I'm wondering, and we'll start with you, Jarrell. Jarrell, can you talk about some of the successes and challenges you've had this year virtually learning?
The successes that I had was like that I found out that I had like more resources at my my fingertips than I usually have. And some disadvantages that like I had during virtual learning was that like I wasn't able to like get the usual help that I get while like inside the school building from the teachers. They usually like doing like hands-on work and like helping me with the hand on with the problem at hand. And like, yeah, that's that.
Thanks, Jarrell. So I'm going to pass that on over to Jalissa. Jalissa, what are some of the ways you found success this year? And what are some of the challenges you've had learning behind a screen?
I guess some ways I found success this year is I guess I paid a bit more attention because I'm more of a visual learner than a listener. And like that's one of my challenges because like I'm more better at learning when I'm in school, like hands-on, like Jarrell was saying. Like that's fine. But I found a lot of success by like Google was a bit of a help too. So
Love that. Thank you, Jalissa. Now, Isaiah, you've had an interesting story that I do want to quickly share. You started the year in a different class in a different program and found almost immediate success learning online and got moved into our honors program really quickly because of that success and are now the star of the honors program. So I'm wondering, how have you been able to find such success this year? What's been your secret sauce there, Isaiah, that's allowed you to grow so quickly this year?
Well, I really don't know. I just like came to work a lot and it was like a bit weird. I didn't think that I was going to like virtual school, but I think like it's better than in person. But I thought it was going to be hard. I thought I was going to find success and I just blocked all of my distraction out of my way, everything. So it was like kind of not that hard for me. And I thought like the 7th grade was going to be like hard and this, that, and the third, but it was like easy for me. So yeah.
You certainly made it look easy this year, Isaiah. I can say that for sure. So I want to transition kind of into this conversation around D. Watkins and We Speak for Ourselves. All of our scholars had the chance to meet him virtually this year. Isaiah actually has had a chance to meet him twice now virtually. So I want you to speak on, and we'll start with Jarrell again. What was the experience like after you read parts of We Speak for Ourselves and then getting to meet him? What was that experience like for you, Jarrell? What were the benefits of that?
Well, reading his book, I was like understanding his point of view on things. Like I was saying, reading his, I thought I was seeing his point of view on things and like seeing him on like doing virtual learning over like the computer screen, like, and like him talking about like the topic and subject of his book was more like more ways of seeing his point of view. And like it was just that like I was basically learning more from him.
Thanks, Jarrell. Yeah, definitely got some great pointers from him. Jalissa, what about you? What was the experience like reading the book and then getting to meet him virtually?
I guess the experience for me was like when I was reading a book, I just learned more, like, cause like I'm young and I don't really know that much Black challenges, but like I learned about what more challenges Black people have to go through. So that was a good thing, and like what he had to go through and how his life was like, and like what happened to his friends and stuff. And I guess the experience for me, like when we met him, it just helped me understand the book more.
Thank you, Jalissa. Isaiah, you had a chance to meet him twice. Once when you were reading through the book, and the second time after you had kind of done this activity, right, to try and create positive change in your community. What was your experience like getting to meet him, Isaiah, and talk to him?
My experience was like really fun, and like I didn't really understand about like the Black community problems. I knew a lot, but I just needed to be more explained, and D. Hopkins helped me to like understand a little bit more. And it was just like his book was just amazing, and I loved it. And even though I haven't read the whole thing, I can like understand his point of view from things. And it's just actually, it was like amazing. And I actually seen him in person before. So we did have a chance to like, say hi and this, that, and third. So it was, cool. This experience was really fun for me.
Love that, Isaiah. And I'm wondering if you could talk briefly about the program or kind of topic you identified as a challenge in Baltimore and what you wanted to do to improve that. To give some context, Isaiah went through a 4-session training program throughout the school year through the middle grades partnership program, where she partnered with City Springs and the Boys Latin School here in Baltimore to kind of create these different activities to increase community engagement. So Isaiah, what was the topic you identified, and what were some of the solutions you came up with for that topic?
The topic that I had picked was homelessness. And it's like a really big problem in Baltimore, like everywhere you go, like Southeast, West Baltimore, East Baltimore, everywhere you go in Baltimore, it's just a lot of people that are not in homes, that are just like living on the streets. And for me, it's like really sad to see people struggle. So I picked this topic because it's really important to me. And I just love to help people. I love to see people, grow, not only friends and family, other people, my other peers and everything. So it was fun. The program was really fun. And sadly, Wednesday, it was our last session with each other. And my plan is to like bring my friends and family together and make up a plan, give water, food, and clothes to people that are unfortunate. So yeah, that's my plan.
Thank you so much for sharing, Isaiah. Definitely would vote for you for mayor tomorrow if I had the chance to. And speaking of that, I want to pass it over to Jalissa and Drew. I'm wondering, when you think about, you've lived in Baltimore your whole life, most of your life was in Perkins Homes, and you've recently moved into West Baltimore. What is your experience like been in Baltimore? And if you became mayor, what would the first kind of thing you'd want to change and improve be? Jalissa, I'm going to start with you first on this one. So if Jalissa was mayor tomorrow, what's your first thing you're trying to start, Jalissa?
Honestly, the first thing I'm trying to start if I'm mayor tomorrow is, I would say, I don't know, I would start on the schools first, because like, I think that not having a good school, not having a good school to learn in will affect you in your grade. Like one of the examples inside his book, We Speak for Ourselves, having a cold school, but you will not be able to focus on your tests, or you will be determined to fail. That would be you can't run away from that. So I guess I would start on the schools, because education is important to survive in the world. So yeah.
Love that, Jalissa. Thank you for sharing. Jarrell, over to you. If you're mayor tomorrow, what's your focus area? What would you want to improve?
The same. On like the lack of education is like, that's that's a main topic in my opinion. That like people need to I wouldn't say they need to learn more before passing on to the next grade, because or have proof that they learned something during that grade period and during that semester or whatever. But yeah, that's what I think.
I wonder what's been your favorite thing you've learned as you kind of wrap up your middle school career for Jarrell and Jalissa and Isaiah, as you get ready for 8th grade. what has been your favorite thing you've learned over the past few years, something that you've really connected with? Darrell, anything that comes to mind right off the bat?
My favorite thing that I learned was in like science class on like when we was like studying like cells and stuff, and like how like traits get passed down from generation to generation. And like that was my favorite thing to learn. And yeah.
Love that, Darrell. What about you, Jalissa? Favorite thing you've learned over the past couple of years?
Well, my favorite thing I learned was in sixth grade when we first started like learning, like getting into algebra. That was my favorite thing I learned.
And Isaiah, what about you? Favorite thing you've learned?
Okay, I have two. For this year, it's science. I liked how we like learned like some things about magnesium. Still surprised I can say that word. And also for history, it was like slavery, some slavery stuff, and I like knew a lot. I like grew a lot of. I like my growth for like slavery has like impressed, and it was like very interesting to know a lot of facts and more. So I had two favorite things.
Love that. And you had some brilliant teachers, Miss Hughes, our science teacher, Mr. Patterson, our history teacher, two amazing educators in that space, which is awesome to hear. And I'm wondering now, kind of the closing piece here, thinking about school and your favorite thing, what have been your least favorite things? If we were to kind of start to change schools and improve schools, what would that look like to you? I know, Jalissa, you kind of touched on this other issue of maybe the buildings aren't as great. Darrell, you kind of touched on what people need to learn, but if you could change what you learn in school, what would that change be? Isaiah, can I start with you for that one? What would be a change you'd make in school right now?
Okay, a change that I will make is the math, because math is my least favorite subject, and it's like a bit hard. I don't know why. I was never a big fan of math. Like, it's like very complicated, but it's like sometimes it get easy and then it get harder, and it's just like which like you have to pick one. So the thing that I would change is math, and I think there should be like a lot more resources for math, and like one-on-one guidance help, I guess, for students who like don't get it right, or who like having trouble, or who just doesn't understand it at all like me, but I do get it sometimes. So I'll change math.
Thanks, Isaiah. Darrell, what about you? What would you want to change?
I feel like history, like we can learn, like when we learn something or like read something, we can go on like a field trip about it, or like to a museum. I feel like we need to do them more like in English when we like read a book, or when we finish reading a book, we meet the author, and like, yeah.
Thank you, Darrell. Jalissa, what about you?
Well, I would change. Well, like, could I add like what we should learn in there too?
Of course.
I don't know, but like, I guess I don't know if I would change anything we learned. I guess I would add more stuff. I think we should learn how to write in cursive, and I think we should learn more about technology, and because we're growing up in a world made of technology. Like, we need to learn more about it if we're going to live in a world. And I feel like we should learn, we should touch on more history topics, because like in certain schools we skip some topics, but I feel like it's history and we should learn it.
Thank you. I actually did have one more question. Speaking specifically about English and your experience with English class over the past couple of years, Darrell, you highlighted it. We do try and identify local or reachable authors to read after every unit, so we can actually meet the author or go to an event connected to them. I'm wondering if you could speak on what's your experience been like reading. I will note that City Springs has a unique and individual curriculum. We're the only school that implements it in the entire state. That was self-created in between myself and the scholars created the curriculum together. And so that allows for a unique experience in terms of the books we explore. So I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit about what's your experience been like in English class based on kind of the books we read and how we've explored them, and also the events and opportunities we've gotten to go to. I know it's been a little different for Isaiah because it's all been virtual, but Jarrell and Jalissa had at least a year in person of it. So Jarrell, what's your experience been like with English and over the past couple of years?
Well, doing in person, when like we had like your class for English, it was very hands-on, and like we got a lot of like opportunity to go to some places and like meet the authors of the book, like I said earlier. And like I feel like it was pretty like easy. It wasn't that complicated or difficult. Yeah, that's why.
Thanks, Jarrell. Jalissa, what about you? How's your experience been like in English class over the past couple of years?
Well, my experience in English, it was like the same as Jarrell. I love how we got like so much experiences during it, like meeting the author and asking the author questions about the book, learning more about the book, and like the author telling us their story and their point of view while writing the book. So I guess that was like one of my favorite experiences. And we got to go like to, yeah, we got to go like see the authors and poets, and they would read to us. So that was fun.
Thanks, Jalissa. Isaiah, I know it's been a little different for you virtually, but what's your experience been like in English class so far this year?
My experience with virtual like English class, sorry, that's my server in the background. My experience with English learning, it's been okay for the most part. For this year, I would say that I have liked it way better. I do agree with Jarrell and Jalissa, like we should go to events, even though they have been. We should like go to events to see the poets and authors, the people that we read their books and everything. So I think English was my least favorite subject, but now it's become one of my second favorite subjects.
And I did not pay her to say that. I want to be very, very clear. There are two quick things I just want to highlight based on what the scholar said to kind of wrap it up. One thing, Jarrell said it's been easier for him. I want to note, scholars are reading above grade level texts in English class right now. So for a scholar to say, I'm reading a 9th grade text, but it's easier, that speaks to how we explore the text being more strategic and better for young people. The second thing that I wanted to highlight is D. Watkins. When I worked with him starting a few years ago, he mentioned a challenge he had was Mark Twain never came to his classroom when he was at Dunbar. And that's why he had a hard time connecting with his books, right? He knew Mark Twain wasn't going to walk through the door anytime soon. And we wanted to shift that narrative with how we explore books, both through One Book Baltimore and through our curriculum. The author should be able to walk through the door. The scholars should know that they have access to an author with the stories they read. It allows for a broader connection and a stronger connection from our young people. So thank you for highlighting pieces. We did not prep or plan that before. So that was just, I told you, the most amazing kids in Baltimore City. Karen, back over to you.
Thank you all so much. So I would like this to just become a group conversation. I also want to acknowledge that in addition to Mr. O and the scholars and David, we also have Latricia Melton here. She is with Enoch Pratt, and those of you who were with us during session 1 got to hear from Latricia about the work that the Pratt has been doing, a partnership with Baltimore City Schools around One Book for the past several years. So Latricia, I just want to invite you to also chime in. Feel free if there's anything you'd like to add to the conversation, and of course, everyone in the audience as well. Mr. O, I was hoping very quickly, you did reference this, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about when you say that you co-create curriculum with your scholars. Can you help us understand what that looks like?
Yes, so when we go out to kind of create a curriculum, the first thing we think about is the text, right? I believe that a book has the power to change someone's life, either in a positive way or in a negative way. And so what we did was we did independent reading that allowed scholars to access tons of text. They could self-select the ones that they wanted to read and then review and give feedback on them and be critical viewers. So from that, we then selected the books that we wanted scholars to explore throughout the year. We also engage in independent reading as well. So I purchase books for them almost on a monthly basis so that they always have an independent reading book handy. So that's kind of step 1. Step 2 is how we structure lessons. So in a traditional district curriculum, the district says, here's your lesson for the day. These are the steps you go through. Here's the 5 minutes for this, the 10 minutes for this, the 20 minutes for this. And it's already a pre-created lesson plan. We went away from that model because we saw that it actually wasn't helping young people. Pacing can change dramatically depending on the class or group. Scholars dictate discussion questions. They help structure writing prompts. They lead in certain areas for brainstorming activities to begin discussions. And so they kind of help create these initial ideas for discussions that we then kind of lead them through. And so that's what it looks like in practice. It means a lot more strategic planning on my end, but a lot more benefits for young people, which is the point. So.
Thank you. So anyone who would like to discuss, feel free to type in the chat or unmute yourself if you like, whatever you prefer. And I actually have a question as we get started. When we're reflecting specifically on We Speak for Ourselves, the one book this year, I know that when I was reading it, and like some of you scholars touched upon, there were events described that I hadn't personally experienced, even though I know they were happening in my own city, to D. Watkins, who grew up here and continues to be a powerful city person. So I'm wondering, do you find it, and this is a question for the scholars in particular, the fact that D. Watkins is telling these stories from his own life rather than it being a work of fiction, how did or didn't that affect how you read it? Did it, for myself, it seemed to help me better understand that I was reading about a real place, real neighborhoods, real streets that I was familiar with, and it all made it seem, for lack of a better term, more real to me. Was that your experience as well, or how did the fact that the book is set in Baltimore, written by someone in Baltimore, how did that affect how you read it or what you got out of it? And feel free, any of you can answer whenever you want.
I was gonna say, like, I feel like I had like a stronger connection with the book once I realized that it was inside Baltimore City, and like the author was from Baltimore City, and like the story started in Baltimore City, and like I feel like I had a stronger connection because like I can make like similarities instead of difference between the book and like what I'm going through like right now during this current time. And like that's why I feel like what happened when I was reading the book.
Great, thank you. And as I see your hand is up as well, would you like to share?
I would also agree with Jerome. From an author that is from Baltimore, it was like kind of, it wasn't strange, but then it was for me. And I actually could connect with this person, with D. Watkins. And when I read it, it was like had same streets, same neighborhoods, same stores, same places and everything. So I most definitely really connected with the story more often. And I was like kind of happy when I found out where D. Watkins was from. So yeah.
Great, thank you. And Jalissa?
I agree with mostly what everyone said. Like I felt connections. It made it more interesting. Like I can actually profoundly put myself in the book. Because usually, like if I read a fantasy book, I can't really imagine myself being in it. I imagine seeing the other person or the main character being in it. But I guess I could see myself more in the book, so that made it more interesting.
And David, I'm wondering if you could give us a sense when you do the storytelling workshops with young people, is there a certain prompt that you use to get the conversation started, or does it depend on the group or the topic? Just wondering what that looks like.
A lot of times I use what's called stream of consciousness. And the way that I like to define stream of consciousness is thinking out loud. So thinking out loud is something that I do all the time. I talk to myself probably more than anybody else in this world. I will admit that probably. And I've become comfortable with thinking out loud as a part of my presentation. Not that I'm doing that, just that, or waiting to that moment to think about what I want to deliver to my audience, but I want to encourage my audience to see the beauty even in their own thought process, if that makes sense. And the thought process that you undertake when it comes to any topic is a story in itself. And that can be the story that you share with your audience. One thing that also helps me, particularly with youth, is telling the youth story. So I am not too far removed from my adolescence. I remember how weird and crazy it was. And I know that there are common themes during that period of time in the life course that are fairly universal, and where adults could really help themselves in building connection with youth is to remind themselves that they themselves were youth once. So many of the questions and many of the themes, particularly figuring out who you are, defining yourself, your self-determination, we all went through it. That is part of the process of growing up. So and I admit my own faults with this as a parent. It's so easy to just tell the kids, be quiet, do what I say, not as I do, all that kind of stuff. Parents can be some of the biggest hypocrites out there, and I live that more and more every day. Just the things that you want your kids to do, but you yourself don't necessarily want to do at that point. So for me, it's honoring the spirit of kids, honoring the intelligence and honoring the insight and wisdom of youth. And again, for us adults, getting off our high horse, not being so pretentious and thinking we just skipped from childhood to adulthood. No, we went through the weirdness that is adolescence, and it would help our youth that we are raising, that we are teaching and guiding, to let them know that all those feelings of being all over the place, not knowing, we felt them too. It's called empathy. That's one of the most powerful things that we can do for our kids, just to exude basic empathy.
Thank you. And I think that's an excellent point. I have to say, as the parent of a teenager, I definitely don't always practice what I preach in terms of encouraging voice. So,
my time is ticking too. I got maybe about 5 years until it
comes. So again, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to raise your hand or put in the chat, but I'm just going to keep going since we have these incredible presenters here. I was wondering, Mr. O, and if your scholars would like to chime in as well, now that this is the third year of the One Book program, I imagine each year, as we discussed in the first session, has come with its own set of challenges. The first year was, of course, the first year. The second year, pandemic came, and we were suddenly automatically shifting to virtual schooling last March, when I know most teachers I know hadn't had direct experience with that, and most students and scholars certainly hadn't had to do that as well. And now, as you mentioned, at your school, it's been completely virtual for the entire 2021 school year. So optimistically thinking that hopefully we will be able to be back in buildings in the fall, can you help us understand some of your plans for moving forward with your scholars next year? And it sounds like as the young people recognize, having in-person events can be really powerful. So I imagine there's hope to moving towards some of that as well.
That is certainly the goal and plan. We have summer opportunities, in-person summer opportunities that we're offering for young people. Isaiah is taking part in one, the Middle Grades Partnership Program. We'll be doing in person, her and her brother, which is awesome. And so that's really amazing. For Baltimore City, we're looking to open in-person learning in school buildings in the fall. And so what it means, though, is how are we going to still be able to connect with some of these authors and activists and artists at events that probably won't be structured in the same way they were before, at least at the start. And so still using some of these virtual tools, right? An author can now Zoom into the classroom rather than have to come visit. That was a tool that I used maybe once or twice before with like an author who lived in Canada. That's about it, right? So we had people had to physically come. So that is a great way to continue to connect our young people and use the technology we have at our hands. And then we're also looking at what do ebooks look like and access to ebooks, and how can we make that more equitable? A lot of our scholars did not have access to electronic books before this began. Everything was, here's the book, put it in your hand. So how can we expand their ebook libraries in a way that actually helps them grow? We do have, all of our scholars have an iPad. So the iPad they're on right now is an iPad that they were provided with by the school. So what does it now look like to have a 1-to-1 ratio? Can those scholars continue to bring those home? And can we expand an ebook library and their at-home library simultaneously? So those are some of the hopes and dreams and aspirations we have, but they're also very, very practical and easy steps if we put our resources into it. So excited for those.
And Latricia, I don't know if you have anything you want to add. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but given that I know the plans for the next One Book series are always, it seems like you all are constantly planning, executing and planning simultaneously. Are those the same kind of issues you all considering in terms of the citywide program for the fall?
Yeah, exactly what Wyatt was just saying. In addition to the ebook, we're also looking at, well, depending on what book is selected, there's something called a playaway that we have available to check out in our locations. It's about this big, and it's basically the book on this little recorder. It usually comes with earbuds, and that's another platform that we're looking to introduce to young people once we decide what book we're going to have this year. But yeah, the ebook has always been in the back of our minds. Our challenge has always been the technology to be able to download to be able to download the ebooks to those devices. So I think as we move on into this new normal, that we'll be able to explore a lot of things that we talked about as if it was like 10, 15 years away. And, now we have to kind of implement a lot of that like we did last year when the pandemic first began. So I think we have to remain in a place of flexibility and just be prepared to shift and pivot wherever we need to as we move ahead.
Well, I just want to say on behalf of all of us at Hopkins that we're just so thankful that you all took the time to be with us here tonight. And I'm also thankful that the storm didn't cut out our power for good, because I was a little nervous that we wouldn't get to have this conversation. And Mr. O and Dr. Falcone, thank you both so much for your time as well. For everyone who joined us tonight, I'll be sending out a follow-up email with additional resources, including an article that David wrote in partnership with our lab that talks more about the storytelling that he was reflecting upon at the beginning of the session. And we've got some comments in the chat of what a pleasure to meet such wonderful scholars. Wishing you all a great summer. And I would like to echo that as well. And thank you all for your time, and we hope that you will stay in touch. Those of you who are joining us from Baltimore or places farther along, Hopkins at Home has a full spectrum of courses and one-off seminars available. And through the power of Zoom, we can all be together even when we can't physically be together. So thank you so much for your time, everyone. Thank you all for a lovely evening.